Well, let's jump on into Welcome to Common Hood. It's your OG Simon P. I'm with Calvin. I got Michelle. We got a special guest with us today.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Mr. OG Calvin introduce our guest today, Mr. Jodi.
This man is Jodi Davis, well known throughout Gainesville, Florida. But he's my dad.
Your dad.
My dad.
Well, thank you, son.
I call him my dad. If you know the story behind me and this man, everybody will shake a stick. I met him about 10 years ago. I had a car wash in Jacksonville. Me and my partner had a little disagreement. I made a phone call to an attorney. The attorney said, you don't need an attorney, you need a mediator. He gave me his number. I called him on the phone. He gets on the phone with me and my partner and squashed the whole thing right then and there.
Wow.
Right then and there. Asked for nothing, didn't even know me from Adam.
Never met you.
Never met me for nothing. Come down here to Gainesville one day. What was it at?
Lost Margaritas.
Was it Lost Margaritas?
Yep.
Lost Margaritas. My family and me, Dad met us over there. At that particular time, we were just getting to know each other. Over a couple of years, we decided to say, hey, you're my son, you're my dad. We've been son and dad ever since. You can't tell us nothing different. Everywhere we go,
That's where we bonded.
this is my dad.
Wow.
Everywhere we go. Everywhere we go.
Well, it seemed like a little tequila at Lost Margaritas.
It was.
I just went there, and he wouldn't buy me anything. So, but no, we just met there, and I met Lucinda, and I guess her mother was there, and Scooby, and that's where we first met, and then we started communicating because you were still living in Jackson.
Still live in Jacksonville. Yep.
Wow, that's
So finally, did you lure him to Gainesville?
Yes.
Because when I told him, I said, you need to decide where you want to be. He was going back and forth, but Lucinda was here a lot because of her mother being from Lake Butler.
Mm-hmm.
So he was wearing out the roads, and with all his rigs and everything else. And I said, you need to pick a place, and Gainesville can be the right place. And then once we started talking and all, then I introduced him a couple other people that I knew, and who were very prominent in Gainesville, and they got along, hit it off, and he decided to move to Gainesville. Well, did you enjoy your move, Calvin?
I enjoyed my move, man. It was a scary feeling, though.
Scary.
You transition in business, and you're taking your businesses from Jacksonville to another city. So it was a scary transition. But
Exactly.
what drew me to this area was mainly because you know my life story about not having a dad and different things. And then we started calling each other father and son. And he said, hey, you need to get on down here to Gainesville. It's like a dad telling his son, you need to get to Gainesville. So I'm like, okay, I'm coming, Dad. I'm coming. He hadn't talked me into it. And Lucinda, she was so good on it because her mom lived in Lake Butler. Our kids live here. Everybody's here in Gainesville. So I was like, okay, we can do it. And once I did it and then started meeting people, it was a blessing, man. It's a total blessing.
That's very rare.
Yeah.
That in the middle of your middle-aged life.
Yeah.
I don't want to say 20s.
I'm young. I'm young.
And your quest to hit the half century mark.
Yep.
You meet Jodi.
Yep.
How did it influence you, though?
Man, I'm talking about every which way in business. He gives me sound advice in business, sound advice in my taxes, sound advice in my relationships, sound advice in anything I ask him about. He talks to me about them like a dad would do. Mm-hmm. And then I go to him like a father, like a father and son situation, goes just how we talk. We go out to lunch a lot, we talk. And you have to have that in your life. And I thank God for him being in my life like that,
right.
Situations come up in my business. I say, Dad, I need you. He's like, again?
Well, it's interesting. Some of the situations that came up, he had a chance to buy a business, a amount of work. And we talked about it. And it's like, what if you get sick?
Yep.
And then everything crumbles and crashes. And it turned out he ended up with COVID right after that, and it would have crashed and burned because it was him and trying to hold it all together. So it's like you can't do too much. But one of the other things I said you need to get to know is a banker.
Mm-hmm.
That saved my butt back in the 80s. That I had a banker that stood by me. He had put me on the Barnett Bank board at the time, the local one. But I got myself in an issue where I owed like $3 million, and I probably had a net worth of 50,000. But I told him, I said, I probably need to resign from the board. And he said, nope. So we'll wrap these things around. You find good buyers of these condos. And sure enough, I got through it. I learned so much doing that.
Through the process.
I helped my clients, being a CPA, financial planner, and all the other things I was doing. It helped me help them. Because, like they're saying, stick to the knitting, stick to what you know how to do. And I was into something I thought it was going to be easy. Well, it wasn't. And the person that we went in with had filed bankruptcy. And so I was stuck with all the debt.
That was a lot of debt. I probably would have been, oh, Lord.
I don't have much hair left. He doesn't have any, but mine was falling out in sheets. And I was trying to grow a CPA firm.
Right.
And ultimately, when we sold the CPA firm, we had 75 people that I was started, but just me. But then it just started to grow, and I had that going at the same time. Here I am, $3 million in debt. And it's like, how am I going to survive this? And my dad said, son, I'll loan you some money to help you. I said, you take care of my kids if I can't get through this.
Yep.
I've got to do it myself. And he was so proud of me doing it that way. But I got through it. But it was without the banker, I couldn't have made it. Period.
You mentioned the importance of a banker before we get into, because I want to cover what traits or what are you identifying your banker? Because normally when you go in the bank, depends on what level, because I hear that you had a $3 million problem. So I don't know if the bank was on the hook with the $3 million. You would say, oh, no.
Oh, they
would let you walk away. We got to figure this out.
Oh, they weren't going to let me walk away by that. And, but it was a problem. And, because I would have, I had a CPA firm. And if, all of a sudden, I went under, then the CPA firm was at risk.
Correct.
Because I'm the one that was kind of holding it together and getting it started. And I enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed growing it. And we were in Gainesville. We were in Stark. We were in Ocala. We were in Chiefland. We were in St. Augustine and Palatka. So we pretty much were blanketed, and it's like, why am I doing all this? Well, I just wanted to do that.
Right.
And I could convince my partners that let's do it.
What are some important questions to ask a banker? What kind of relationship you want? There's a personal, which sometimes, and I've had a chance to experience a little growth.
Yeah.
So when I first just go in, we can get you a credit card. How about a car loan? How about that? And I was very astute about debt. It's like, you giving me debt. Then as my account grew, I noticed people from the back came. Is that a relationship?
Well, what was interesting, when I first left, I left Purvis Gray and Company. I'd been with them, right about 6 years. And I went out on my own, and a person called me, who was the wife of one of the people that was working at Purvis Gray at the time. And they introduced me to Barnett Bank had just opened a branch here.
Okay.
And it was Alan Lastinger, who ended up being the head of Barnett Bank. But Alan said, well, wouldn't you like to borrow some money, or you need to borrow some money? Well, that'd probably be helpful. How about, $5,000? He said, okay, well, I need a $5,000 CD to secure it. I said, then I'm not borrowing any money, am I? He said, well, you don't have any, track record. You haven't been in business. You're just starting.
That's interesting. It teaches how to build collateral without having credit at all.
Yeah, so he wasn't going to be out there on the limb loaning me $5,000 without collateral.
Right.
And so, so I'm starting. I think at the time I probably had about $20,000, something around there, $10,000 to $20,000 to be able to start this business, and I could live on $1,000 a month.
Right.
And so I knew I had to build and collect that much a month to be able to survive, because there was no way to borrow any money from anywhere.
Exactly.
All right, you're trying to get established.
And I got established, and it's, went from there. But then once you did get everything rolling, the bankers, after you had about 3 to 5 years and you're showing you're making money and you're paying your bills and everything, they're wanting to loan you money.
Correct.
Because they feel comfortable you're going to pay it, but they're judging you on your character as much as anything else.
And I can attest to that, because when I got introduced to the bank that I'm at right now, it's a banker, and I might not say his name on air, but he is one of the ones that helps me out a lot. He manages my account. He tells me what's going on. We stay in contact about certain things. He say, hey, okay, Calvin, you got to do this, this, and this, and this. But if my track record wasn't good, I don't think he would be by my side. But he's on my side. My dad introduced me to him. My dad had a relationship with him, and I went into the bank, and now I have a relationship with him, which is good.
Well, one of the things that you and I have talked about, because a lot of times these people out there in the peripheral will get a hold of you to try to loan you money at 25% interest.
Oh yeah.
And they're just trying to fleece you, basically. But when you're hurting, you need the cash to grow and expand and do all that. But if you get caught up with people like that, if you survive that, it's amazing. But if you can just work through it, and that's where you get the right banker, he or she will help you work through the process so that you will then know when it's safe to expand your business.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So you definitely have to know that number one job of the bankers, they want to know, no matter who you are, how you going to pay me back. So I mentioned the collateral of the two things you mentioned so far. You mentioned the CD, and then you mentioned that when you had that huge debt amount, I heard condos, which is an asset to be used to help convert over in order to help pay those loans back. So my second question to you, and since we have the beautiful Michelle, I have to ask this, because Calvin introduced you as a mediator, and we have a beautiful female here. I want to combine mediator with relationships. So let's park on bartering for a minute. Is that the right term I'm using? Bartering. So bartering. I may be saying that right. We had a little public school education growing up. Compromising. How do you tie compromising with your situation when you solve the problem for Calvin and his former business partner?
Compromising. Well, life is, there's a lot of compromises in life, period. I mean, if you're going, like I was a CPA, financial planner, and all this, starting, but when you got a client, you're compromising. That they're wanting you to do a service, and you're wanting them to pay you. Mm-hmm. So you've got to make sure you're giving them the quality work that they want, and you want to make sure they're going to pay you at a time and rateably such that you can survive. And so it's a quid per whatever that word is, but it's got to work for both parties.
Yep.
And what I found out, like in my case, I enjoyed helping people that were in trouble. And so and when I took a Myers-Briggs test one time, I had gone into medicine, and I quit after 3 months because it wasn't for me. But when I took the Myers-Briggs test, it said, don't be a CPA and don't be a doctor. But what I was good at was growing a business. My mom and dad grew an incredible number of businesses. My mom could just see something and do it. But
see the value in it.
Yeah, and so I decided, I wanted to grow the business. So every time I get a particular job, or if I look at the people I'd already hired or brought in as partners or whatever, and we didn't have that expertise, I'd go hire another one. And so I would grow the business and get them to do all the work because I don't like detail. As much as it may sound like I like detail, I don't. But I love helping people work their way out of trouble. And that's when you mentioned mediation, that I ended up doing over 700 divorce mediations. Because the parties,
You got to rather tell us about relationships.
well, they're not. The parties are not listening to each other. But I'm sitting here and I let them talk. And you want to keep talking because they're not listening to each other. But I'm here and I say, well, here's what I heard you say.
Okay.
And they go, we said that? I said, that's what I heard. Well, that'll work because they don't hear it.
Yeah.
But I heard it. Yeah, I can't say this is what you need to do because then you're not mediating.
Right.
You're making a decision for them. But I just thoroughly enjoyed that. And then, but a lot of times I was doing that with just clients trying to sit there and find out how to work out of their problem. And,
Makes sense. That's good.
and it was fun doing it because especially when you're successful and being able to do it.
Well, if I had to tie it to a relationship, I just want Michelle to kind of agree. You mentioned, finding the value and the active listening.
What? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very
You
important.
can't get nowhere with active listening.
Well, when that Myers-Briggs, the test and all that I was telling you about, what I found out when I was 50, why I wasn't going to be a doctor, is I have ADD, attention deficit disorder, and therefore,
We similar with that.
well, what would happen is I would hear something, but if I don't have an exam coming up in the near future or something I was going to use specifically, it would go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
But mediation, when you're there with the parties, like in divorce, you're trying to settle it that day, and it may be at 2 or 3 in the morning, and my listening was incredible, and I didn't know I was that good a listener. But all of a sudden, and they would say a few things, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is going to be easy. But I've got to couch it such and present it such that it's their idea. Yeah. And if and we tweak it a little bit, and all of a sudden we got a deal, and they're very happy about it. I probably about 85% of the time, and I probably got about 20 couples back together because it was financial issues, and that they didn't realize they did not. How to solve the financial issue, and yet it was right there in front of them.
That's good.
So if I may ask a question, when you said that it was a financial issue, was it that they weren't communicating on like maybe purchases or coming up with a budget and having a common ground with it?
Well, I want to give you one example. There won't be people here, but it was names anyway. But it was like 1st of March during tax season, so I'm busy.
Okay.
And the couple came in, and they started talking, and the husband had just retired, and the wife was getting upset because he's spending all his time fishing and playing golf. Okay. And he's getting upset because she wants to spend all her money, doing facelifts and traveling. And I said, all right, how much money is it going to take to take care of your household? And it's about $2,000. How much money you got coming in? It's about $3,500 a month. I said, what if we do this? What if we take $2,000, put it in this pot, take another $500, put it also in this pot for your all's joint trips or things things that might come up, and then each of you get $500, and you can do whatever you want to with it.
I said, my daughter just recently got married. That's the same suggestion that I gave them.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have some little independence on your hobbies.
Yeah.
But for the main thing, you got to be joined on.
Well, it's like him. He'd been working all his time. And he was like, God, I'm getting to retire, and now you're telling me I can't fish and I can't play golf. So all of a sudden I said, well, what do you think? And they said, that'll work. And so next thing you know, 6 months later, she calls me on the phone. He said, this is so-and-so. I said, you probably don't remember me. Oh, I do. I'm dying to find out how's it working.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, it's working fine. I said, so he's the $500 for him is working fine. He said, oh no, he's spending way more than that, but he took a part-time job. Yeah. Is that all right with you? Yeah. Is all right with him? Yeah, that's working. But that's not my question. The question is, my $500, I'm not spending it right now. I want to invest it. Does he get any of the proceeds if it makes money? And I said, technically it's a marital asset, but you all could write up an agreement and both of you sign that anything you make out of this that goes into your pot, you can do with later. Oh, okay. I've never heard a thing from her ever again. But it made sense.
You know, I didn't know once you get married that you can modify the marriage when you want to do something like that. Normally, we wait till it gets bad, and then there's anger brought to the table.
It's lack of communication. If you're not talking to each other, you have no marriage.
That's true.
Wow. You have no
Definitely
marriage.
true.
You don't have a business. If you have a partner and you're not talking, and that's where everything falls. It's communication between them, because there's no way everything's going to be great. Things are going to be bad, and you need to be able to make sure you discuss it. You don't want to have something go bad and not tell your partner it's going bad, and, it's, I had that with, one of my partners. He would effectively say that he's taking care of it when he hadn't. And I said, I just don't ever do that again, because I ended up having to go and bail out our firm to go talk to and get that client happy when all he had to do was say, I can't get to it, instead of saying, well, I've already taken care of it, when he hadn't.
Exactly.
And, but that's communication.
Communication overlaps with an effective relationship in any genre that you want to face it, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, and in this case, business partners, and in his case, negotiating with an ex-business partner.
Yeah,
that communication is there. So,
well, what I liked about that one is they're friends still.
Yeah,
we're still friends. That was really 15 minutes on the phone. That's all it took.
Out of curiosity, before Jodi got involved, what held you two back from resolving your differences?
We wasn't listening to one another. Communication. We both had differences of opinion.
Right.
I believe that you bring the money in, you put the money back into the business. You don't bring the money in and then spend the money. You bring the money in, you put the money back into the business. You don't bring the money in and spend the money. You see, so that was our difference of opinion. And basically so
that wasn't a goal set in the middle to justify to your partner on why I need to keep putting it in.
Well,
what's the value into it? That's what Mr.
Well, one of the other things that I was hearing from because I talked to each of them separate, and then we talked together and got the thing done. But it was each of them had their own idea how it could be settled, but they weren't listening to each other. And so his partner was saying, "Well, I want this much money up front to get whole." Well, he didn't have that much money, and his partner knew that, but he wanted it, and that's the only way we're settling this.
Because I sunk most of the money back into the business, so I didn't have the money to pay back right there. And most of mine was going back into the business. You know what I'm saying? So I couldn't buy him out, he couldn't buy me out, or nothing like that. It was one of those things where we had to come up with like some type of agreement.
And it was important that he agreed on an amount that he would absolutely be able to come up with every month, because don't go say I can pay $1,000 a month when there's not a chance in the world that you can. The best you can do is $500 a month. Save. All right, we'll do $500 a month.
And your business dealings. I know you say you did, but the marriages, but. Are you very keen on having business partnerships? And if you're going to form a partnership, what's some advice you would give if one have the drive and one have the money, or vice versa?
Well, I like having partners. I mean,
Absolutely.
but I also, you've got to have you and we had a split up in the CPA part. At one time we were over 10 partners and all this, but you've got to have the same culture. You got to have the same beliefs and the same desires. And what was happening, we had the one office working one way. They were working, over 100 hours a week during the season, and we were working 60. And they were upset that we weren't working 100, but they wanted people to come over.
I'd rather work with y'all if it's the one that works 60.
Well, but they were charging like $50. I said, if you would charge
Scale up a
200, I will send people over there, but they're not going over there to work, at minimum wage.
Right.
And they've already gone through their education and all. So you had to have the same culture, the same beliefs, and the same drive. But you've got to make sure that they're honorable, they're honest people, and and you get people like that. It's fun to work together.
Yeah. You accomplish more. And just to piggyback on a relationship, or in this case, when you mentioned you have to have the same core values and the same mission statement, so to say, it's kind of like being in your marriage. Like we have to set a goal on which direction. Being in a boyfriend and girlfriend, we got to set a goal on what are we trying to get out of this in order to move forward. So they always say that, I guess the biblical thing, Calvin, is two always better than one, right?
A whole army better than one.
In a situation.
Yeah.
But it's best when there's a commonality of an.
Well, you mentioned about marriage as an example. Because this is one of the things, having done so many divorce mediations.
Okay.
That I've told a lot of people, if you have a choice, is don't get married until you're at least 30. There's a reason for that.
Okay.
Because when I got married, it was 21, but basically you're in love, you're at 21, and you're looking, okay, how am I going to change the other party? And they're looking how they're going to change you. Okay. Well, in reality, you don't know who you are until you're 30. And so by the time you're 30, and all of a sudden, the parties start going like this. And if you'd have waited until 30, you would have realized it. You finally get to a point who you are. That you are not the person you thought you were at 21. You're the person up here that you're comfortable with at 30. And that person may not mesh with the other party.
Oh, now you know what? That definitely makes a whole lot of sense.
It's amazing how that works. And it's like I had no idea. And then at 30, you're not trying to change the other party, because you're going to realize that person is who they are, and I love that person the way they are, and I'm happy with myself the way I am, and so all of a sudden you got a chance to have a really lasting relationship. But what happens a lot of times, you start here and all of a sudden you're out here, and how do you get back?
That's it.
You almost can't.
You can't.
Because you're two different two different people. You're two different paths.
Jodi, I like how you say that. I don't want to use the age 30, because some be on the delayed progress.
Well, it could be 35. It could be be 50. I mean, there's people get married 50 and they're active.
And I wonder, through your time of having the divorces, when we talking about knowledge, I'm thinking of when I wasted time. Let's just say we got married at that 21.
Right.
And you become knowledge of thyself, and you saying they still not getting it.
Well, that's where the communication becomes even more critical. It is because in a lot of cases you have kids, and I'm new kids. I mean, parents from growing up in Orlando, that they said, well, they agreed they were going to stay together, and some here, they were going to stay together until their kids grow up.
Yep.
Well, it doesn't necessarily work.
That's a waste of time.
That's wasting time.
One of the things, I was married before, and one of the things my kids told me, because I'm married again, and and my ex-wife got married again, and my kids, they thought we had a loving relationship and all. We had a relationship and all, but we weren't meshing. And then all of a sudden they said, we at first were upset, but all of a sudden we had 4 parents, not 2 parents.
Wow.
And 4 loving parents. And it's like, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. But if all of a sudden, and so they loved the fact that they had 2 sets of parents, and, and things just meshed along, went along great.
I was thinking about how important it is to have self-reflection during these moments while you communicate.
It's tough.
That's tough. That's a tough one. Mm-hmm. Whether you got your business relationship with your bad employees, when you say you may have to say this partner ain't quite working out. That's a self-reflective moment here. Mm-hmm. Same thing when it comes to relationships. So, taking away some golden nuggets that didn't cost me a dime today. I didn't have to go buy a personal help book. I didn't have to sit through a long sermon about it.
No, right.
To wait till the announcements. I mean, you kind of
hit
really, really good. Really good.
With communication is important. Being an active listener, of having 2 ears, and making sure you understand. Because I heard you say that you sit 2 people together. Say, let me say this to you. That I heard you say. You may take ownership.
I had one of my partners was a graduate from Georgia Tech. He was an engineer.
That's what they do over there at Georgia Tech.
And so effectively, after a while, it dawned on me what I had to do. And anytime we try to get a consensus of opinion, so you don't really have to vote, but a consensus of opinion. And so with him, I would say, would you repeat what we just agreed to? And all of a sudden, when it came back out and everybody looked at him, it's like, that's not what we agreed to, because he's processing it as an engineer. Yeah. And it was sometimes almost 180 degrees from what we had agreed to, consensus. But he would have gone off on the other tangent. So I had to get him to reiterate what he heard so that we, for sure, were on the same page.
It's kind of like reinforcement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you're not careful,
that's a nice way to put it without saying, shaking your head and say, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Could you kindly reflect or repeat what was said to make sure we have a...
Yeah, it was. Initially, it never occurred to me that we could have possibly had a misunderstanding of what was agreed to. But sure enough, say 10 partners, there was 9 that totally understood it one way, and 1 that totally understood it another. And so that way, it was reinforced, like you said. It was great.
But Jodi, we mentioned something earlier this week, and you mentioned that you had a nice story to share about how it was pre-civil rights and post-civil rights. You care to share that?
You mean with home?
I think you mentioned like the difference of the moral thing that we have going on with analyzing the two. Time.
If this story that you're thinking about, it was something I grew up with a mom and dad. We had they met in 1945, and 12 days later they started a drugstore together, and then within 2 months of meeting each other, they got married. And I said, Dad, that's not very long. He said, well, he was about 35, so he said, hot. Well, she had a date with Ronald Reagan. She was
Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, she had been
You're saying the big Gipple.
him. Ronald Reagan. But she was Miss Des Moines. She sang with Sophie Tucker in the big band there and all that. But she ended up and her dad worked for Rexall, and my dad worked for McKesson Robbins. So they started the drugstore going and all this other stuff. But it was still segregation back in Orlando.
Yeah.
And I remember being in high school and junior high that around 1962, you would read in the newspaper that it's going to be major race riots in Orlando. And then it didn't happen. And I said, I really can't believe it didn't happen when the way they were talking about it.
Kind of like they're doing now.
Yeah. And then 15 years later, my brother was running for county commission, and he was trying to get the black vote in Orlando. And he was talking to them. They said, we will always support you because you're dead. And it's like,
That's what I remember.
yeah, and it's like, what did my dad do? And so they told him that they were having these downtown. My dad was the president of downtown business. He'd been president of the chamber in '59, and they had the city commission, the county commission. They had the church leaders. They had, every entity was down there meeting, yelling at each other. And apparently my dad stood up because when I went down to Orlando to talk to Dad. Is this all true? And he said, my dad stood up and he said, as of tomorrow, our lunch counter will be integrated. Our motel will be integrated. And it's time for the rest of you to do the same. And
Wow.
so it was like, and the black community talked to my brother, said he diffused the whole thing. He said nobody had, but then I said that to Dad. I said, I've never been more proud of you in my life. And he said, well, that night at the ranch, the KKK showed up at the house. And here my brother and I are asleep. My mom's asleep. And we never knew this. And my dad told me 15 years later, they came in their hoods, and Dad said, I called them all by name because I knew who they were. And he said, they were trying to convince him to change his mind. And he said, no, you all need to change the way you're dealing with things. And I said, if they didn't love my dad, they'd have killed us all.
Yeah.
Because we're 5 miles away from anybody. We're out in the woods.
Yes. But, the story was engraved in my head because your background as a mediator, and when you're doing financial services on the CPA level, you do have to identify problems with finances. It made me say, that's where you got your skills from your dad, man, under the toughest environment of that civil rights bridge. Like your dad calmed the storm down.
Yeah.
Well, he was always a gentleman, and he never heard him cuss, and but he was very critical. And my brother never got close to him. And a guy named Skip Everett got me when I was going through divorce and all that other stuff. Got me to read a book called The Inner Child.
The Inner Child.
The Inner Child.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I read that thing because I always thought I was like my mom. And then when I read that book, I said, dang, I'm not exactly like my dad. And I called my dad up, and I went down to see him in Orlando. And I went up and hugged him. And I said, Dad, I love you. And first time I can remember he ever said, I love you. It was hard for him. He was a strong, man, but he allowed my mom to be the type of person and woman that she was. because my mom did everything. And, but we were like this from then on, best friends. But I never could get my brother to get over him being critical. And I said, all he's trying to do is help you think through everything before you go and do something. This is what you and I've done.
All the time.
You know, is
All the time.
don't go jump into something without thinking what's the worst thing that can happen. Because when I got in that development, that was $3 million in debt. I didn't think what's the worst thing that can happen. If I had, I wouldn't have done it. You know, and it's like, if you think through that, then you're prepared for the stuff that comes up.
Yeah.
You know how to respond to it and think about it, instead of just thinking everything's going to be hunky-dory and it's going to be smooth sailing. Nothing is smooth sailing.
Everything is relationship based, and
It is.
You know, you gave some very powerful suggestions if you're not using them with, well, like I say, with the active listening, with the understanding the value, and just finding those commonalities. So, you know, Michelle, I hope you took something from it.
I did.
Of utilizing these things that he used in business and mentally using services that you can use in a relationship.
Yes.
Which is everybody have them.
Yes, I did. I really liked the way he said being an active listener. Because in relationships, you got to be active listener to, and even if you're selling on something, you need to allow the other person to talk. And like you said, when you're listening to people, they were totally not they were talking, but they were talking totally not at each other. They was just talking, and they heard nothing.
Oh, it was
You heard it,
Oh, yeah.
but they didn't hear it.
2 ears. Boing. 2 ears, 2 ears, 2 ears. Well, we're going to wrap this up, Mr. Jodi. We really appreciate you
Well,
sir.
I enjoyed this.
coming past today and enjoying it. And I definitely enjoy learning. I can see why. Is he a hard head, son? Do you have to, is it just like,
That's why he wears a hat to hold it in.
yeah, he got dents all he got dents all in that bald head that you've had to, can you see it?
No.
Well, yeah, he's met my kind of like another son, George Bethay. And George, I mean, you think he has big hands. You see George,
George hands like this.
they're gigantic.
Yep.
And, but it was a funny thing because he was giving a sermon. And he was talking. George was there to listen to it too. And one of the stories that when I was over 300 pounds, and I went up and blocked his dunk.
Really?
Right. I mean, it was unbelievable. I got long arms. I couldn't believe I got up there, and he couldn't believe it either. You should have seen his eyes pop out. It's like, there's no way you can do. But anyway, he got up to tell the story, and he told the story how I dunked on top of him. Really? And George just got, God dang. Jodi's now dunked on me.
Wow.
Hey, Calvin, I want you to close us out a little bit with explaining how important this mentorship has been with Jodi and how impactful it is in your life the past 10 years and how he put you on a track that you wanted to do.
It has been phenomenal, man. Without this man in my life, I believe that I would probably make some pretty messed up decisions in business, financial wise. He's given me sound advice on a lot of different areas in my marriage, even in my business. He keeps me on point. He's a good listener. He doesn't ever really tell me nothing bad. He get on me sometimes, not all the time, but he gets on me sometimes. But it's just like what a father would do with a real son. So our relationship is this totally different than like somebody saying, "Oh, we father and son." It's really father and son. If he goes somewhere, he says, "That's my son Calvin." If I go somewhere, that's my dad Jodi. They always look at us like, "What the heck? How that happened?" You know, they look at us like that. How that happened? But the longevity, the relationship that we have, nobody can change that. You know, that it's so powerful the way God did for me, you know, coming from being a dumpster baby, not having a father and different things of nature. Then he give me one. And I'm like, well, you never know, is it going to be black, white, Puerto Rican, Chinese?
You don't.
You don't know.
Yeah,
but when you know, I was a kid in a candy store when this man came into my life because I go to him for stuff like a son would do. I call him up. Sometimes I get on his nerve. You know, he don't tell me, but I'm pretty sure he go back.
Sometimes
He go, here you go again. But I thank God for him. The mentorship that he gives me is sound advice. Everybody needs some type of mentor in their life. Somebody they can go to, somebody they can talk to. And if a kid has a father or mother inside the household, the parents have to understand to be able to listen to that child, because sometimes that child cry out in different ways. You know, I'm a grown adult and I still have an inner child inside me. So sometimes I call him up and I vent to him like a son would. You know, he listens to me like a father would, and he gives me advice. I went up to his house yesterday, and we sitting over there talking yesterday. We was talking about just different things, and he listened, and it's a beautiful situation for me. And I really appreciate him in my life. I really do.
Well, you know, you just mentioned inner child.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to hold you accountable to get the book, Michelle accountable to get the book.
Already read it.
And we're going to have to do a little bit.
Already read it, but I'll get the book.
read the inner
child. Listen, that book was better.
I've never read it, but I'll definitely.
That book helps you understand who you're connected to.
It was unbelievable.
It helps you understand who you're connected to and why you're connected to that individual, your parents. Basically, who are you? Basically, it helps you realize who you are inside. Basically, and each one of us got an inner child. Each one of us has it.
I'm glad God inspired whoever the author is to write such a powerful book.
Look at Lynn author. You remember her?
No, I don't. I mean, that was why the
Jeff Bezos will help us find it. Jeff Bezos, he might help us find that book. Well, anyway, in closing, I thank you so much for coming today.
It was great.
It was
My hands, man. I appreciate it. I enjoyed meeting you too.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I know what wisdom is now.
I can say you had a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom that was left on the floor for us to determine. It's like having a buffet, Mr. Jodi. You gave us a buffet. And
$9.99. All you can eat.
yeah, you gave us a buffet. And
That was in 20 years ago.
Yeah.
20 years ago. But thank you so much for just sharing wisdom. Because I truly can walk away with some information that can help me as far as being a life coach and becoming a behavior analyst.
Being a life coach that's cool.
Yeah, life coach is very cool.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you.
And
Definitely got to get a listener buds on. But thank you for joining us for another episode with Carmen Hood. This is Simon P. This is Calvin out with Jodi and embraced by the beautiful Michelle. Listen to this and be active. Like, share, and make sure you subscribe. We out.
thank you.